The following is a presentation of the Eagles Sports Network.
Let me read the plaque for Mike, please. One of the best linebackers in Carson-Newman history. Clowney ranks 6th all-time with 353 tackles. He was the first All-American in 1996, first-team All-American in 1996, named South Atlantic Conference Defensive Player of the Year in 96. Clowney was inducted in the SAC, South Atlantic Conference Hall of Fame in 2015, and he leads Carson-Newman to his first national championship appearance. Pretty tall cotton, right? That was that stretch where we were getting there a lot. Mike, congratulations, brother.
Okay, you've got the floor first. Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you to Carson-Newman and the faculty, staff, coaches here at Carson-Newman for, giving me the opportunity to come to Carson-Newman and not just come to Carson-Newman to play football, but come here to be a student and basically grow as a person and learn life. I mean, a lot of times as young athletes, we wind up going to a place, basically pursuing our sport. But when you get there, you kind of find another side of things, and that's what I found here at Carson-Newman. This is where I really, for the first time, got face-to-face with Jesus Christ. I mean, I'd always been in church. I'd always, kind of followed Christ in a sense, but it's never really been my own religion. So one big thing for me here was getting here, getting with a lot of the other players, and it really started happening on my recruiting visit. A lot of times on recruiting visits, you'll look to go to parties and have a good time. When I came on my recruiting visit, I met a guy named Johnny Smith, and we sat in the dorm that night. And when I walked by the dorm rooms, everyone in their room had a book that looked just alike. And I kept asking Johnny what the book was, and he said, "We'll talk about it later." And eventually we wound up going back to his room, and he said, "Are you ready for me to tell you about this book?" And so we opened the Bible, and we stayed up till 3 o'clock at night talking about the Bible. And it was the first time that I ever really done that with one of my peers, someone my own age. And I knew at that moment that, Carson-Newman was the place that God was leading me to.
Tell us then, as a coach, how do you sell Carson-Newman to the recruits that you've got on the telephone, you bring to campus? Do you tell them your story?
I think I should do tell them my story, but I think one thing as a salesman that always makes it easy is if you have a good product. It's easy to sell a good product, and I think Carson-Newman is a good product. So our biggest key when we get guys on campus is to get them around so that they can meet the people here. They can be involved with the players. I mean, they see the facilities, they like the facilities, but I think the big selling point is, what's going to happen in your life during the time that you're going to be here at Carson-Newman.
As a senior, you were a member of Carson-Newman's first NCAA National Championship team, the 96 team. Is there anything special about that team you remember, or any big game that you recall during your career at Carson-Newman?
The biggest thing I remember about that team is the fellowship amongst the players. I've been on 3 teams here, of course, and, I've always felt like we had the potential to go to a national championship, play for a national championship, win a national championship. But one of the big things was always getting everybody on the same page. And I just remember going into my senior year in 96, a lot of people just didn't feel like we'd have a great football team that year. We had, I think there were 8 guys that were preseason All-American the year before that had left, so we didn't have a whole lot of guys that were going to be here. And I just remember getting involved with the coaches and the recruiting process at that point in time, and we knew that we would have to have young guys to come in and play. And just, those guys coming in and the older guys buying into the younger guys and helping the younger guys grow and develop. And I remember, the first 2 games of that season thinking about, it was going to be up to me for us to win football games. And I came back after game 2 and I watched video and I'm like, these guys are pretty good. And, it actually gave me a chance to relax and enjoy those guys that I played with. And that team is probably the most special team that I've ever played on because we overcome a lot of obstacles and wound up playing for the national championship.
The game with UC Davis was huge, was it not? The semifinal game.
I mean, that was a big game because anytime you're going to have a good football team, you're going to have obstacles that we talked about that you've got to overcome. And the UC Davis game, I think we were down by 24 at halftime. And I remember going in at halftime, and, you know, we had these aspirations of playing for a national championship. And at that point in time, it looks like, you know, our backs were against the wall pretty good. And I just remembered us challenging one another at halftime of, like, this is not it. That year during the playoffs, we did a countdown. So we counted every game down, and we talked about whether this is going to be our last game. And we decided at halftime that this wouldn't be our last football game. And if it was, that when we finished it, that we'd have no regrets. And we were able to come back and win that football game to put ourselves into the national championship.
Outside of football, you've made some great friendships during your time at Carson-Newman, and since you've returned to Carson-Newman, share those with us.
You know, I think football and athletics, there's a natural flow into building friendships, but I think one big thing that separates Carson-Newman were the relationships and friendships that I was able to build outside of football. I actually met my wife, Carrie, her, my son, Preston's here, so we met at Carson-Newman. That was naturally a friendship that developed over a long period of time. And, you know, I actually was out in the office the other day, and the guy that I was good friends with in the dorm, he come by to see me. And, like, football, you expect those guys to come by. But this guy, I was a RA in Heritage, and he come by, and, you know, he just talked about the friendship that we developed, and he brought his family by, and we sat down and talked, and it was just probably one of the most proud moments I have since I've really been here, because football's easy, but when you go outside and you build those relationships with you know, athletes called regular students, and just kind of, you know, to where you can develop yourself as a whole, as a student, as a person, as a Christian, and not just as an athlete.
Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome once again Mike Clowney, Carson-Newman Athletic Hall of Famer.